The argument. You're not having word. You're nodding. Your colleague is explaining why the deadline is impossible. Voice rising slightly and you're nodding, but inside you're already constructing their case better than they are. If I were them, I'd mention the resource constraints first, not last. I'd bring up the vendor delay. Stop. You just steel-manned their argument while they were still making it. Not to win, not even consciously. Your brain was stress testing their position by making it stronger, finding its load-bearing points, identifying where it could crack. This is the thing you do that you think everyone does. They don't. Most people listen to respond. You listen to reconstruct. You're building their argument in parallel processing, finding its best possible form, and then deciding if it holds. It feels like mental calisthenics. It is. But here's what you didn't realize. This habit is why conversations exhaust you. Because while they're making one argument, you're running three. Their actual argument, what they're saying. Their best argument, what they should be saying. The argument against both, where the weaknesses hide. You thought this was normal, that everyone's mind split screens like this. The exhaustion you feel after meetings, that's not introversion. That's running three cognitive processes simultaneously while pretending to run one. And here's the cost nobody tells you about. People think you're not listening. Because you pause. Because you're slow to respond. Because you're finishing building their case for them before you open your mouth. That pause, that 3-second delay before you speak, you're not gathering thoughts. You're quality testing an argument that isn't even yours. But there's something stranger happening in that silence. Something about questions. The waterfall. The question hangs in the air. Should we expand to the European market? Everyone else hears a yes or no question. You hear the first domino. Before anyone finishes their coffee, your mind is already 5 questions deep. What problem does European expansion solve? Is that the real problem or a symptom? What happens if we solve it differently? What are we not seeing because we're focused here? What question should we be asking instead? You don't try to do this. It just cascades. You've learned to hide it now. Early in your career, you made the mistake of voicing the question chain out loud. The meeting room went quiet. That specific kind of quiet where people exchange glances that mean, here we go again. Because while they're answering the first question, you've dissolved it into its components parts, traced it back to assumptions, and found 3 questions that matter more. And the brutal part? You're usually right to do this, that European expansion question. The real question is whether the current product market fit is strong enough to replicate. Everyone else is picking cities and hiring plans. You're questioning whether the foundation can bear the weight. This makes you valuable and isolated because you can't stop at the surface question. Your brain automatically pulls on threads until it finds the load-bearing question underneath. The one that makes all the other questions irrelevant if answered first. Someone asks, why is turnover high? Your brain, what are we defining as turnover? What's the baseline? What changed 6 months before it spiked? And are we measuring the right thing? They want a quick answer. You need to verify the question first. And here's what nobody tells you. Sometimes the question underneath is one nobody wants to answer. Sometimes your cascade leads somewhere uncomfortable. Sometimes you find the real question and realize the entire meeting is solving the wrong problem. You've stopped voicing this. Now you just feel the quiet discomfort of knowing the conversation is happening on the wrong layer. But that discomfort, it's pointing to something else. The pattern that won't leave you alone. 3 conversations in 1 week. Different people. Different topics. Identical structure. Your friend describing why their relationship is failing. Your manager explaining the product launch delay. A podcast about Roman infrastructure collapse. Same shape, same pattern, same failure mode. You see it immediately. Resource allocation mismatch during scaling. The relationship grew faster than communication infrastructure. The product roadmap expanded faster than team capacity. Rome built empire faster than road maintenance budgets. Different domains, same architecture. And now you can't unsee it. This is the thing that makes people call you the person who always connects everything. They don't mean it as a compliment. They mean you can't stay on topic. They mean you bring up ancient history in marketing meetings. They mean you see connections that feel random to everyone else. But they're not random. Your brain doesn't file information by category. It files by pattern structure. So when a pattern repeats, your brain lights up across domains. You can't explain why you know the relationship will end the same way the product launch will fail the same way Rome did. But you do, because you've seen this pattern. The shape of the failure is identical. And here's what makes this habit both a gift and curse. You're right more often than you're wrong. That relationship did end. That product launch did miss. Your cross-domain prediction accuracy is unsettling. But the social cost is real. You're in a meeting about Q4 revenue and you reference 17th century Dutch tulip economics. Blank stares. Someone coughs. You watch credibility evaporate in real time. Later, 3 months later, when the bubble bursts exactly as you described, nobody remembers you called it. They just remember you were the random reference person. Pattern recognition as involuntary reflex means you can't turn it off. You see the shape repeating, and your mouth is moving before executive function catches up. You've learned to translate now, to hide the cross-domain jump, to say, I think this might follow a similar trajectory to X, instead of, this is exactly like the fall of Rome. But you still see it. The same pattern, different costume, everywhere. The simulation. You can't stop running. Your friend is 3 sentences into their story, and you're already at the ending. Not because you're not listening, because you're listening so precisely that your brain has built a predictive model in real time. They say, so I told my boss I needed more resources, and your simulation is already running. 67% chance. Boss deflects with, let's revisit next quarter. 23% chance. Boss agrees, but resources never materialize. 10% chance. Actual allocation happens. You're not psychic. You're running probabilistic modeling based on pattern recognition, tone analysis, and context clues they haven't even verbalized yet. And when they get to, he said we'd revisit it next quarter, you have to manually generate surprise on your face. This is exhausting in a specific way, because you're experiencing the conversation twice. Once as they tell it, once as your brain predicts it. And when your prediction is accurate, which it usually is, you have to pretend you didn't see it coming. Social protocol demands surprise. But here's where it gets strange. When you're wrong, something fascinating happens. Your model updates instantly, not defensively, not with rationalization. Your brain just absorbs the new data and recalibrates it. They say something unpredictable. The boss actually came through, hired 2 people that week, and you feel a small spark of genuine delight. Not because you're happy for them, though you are. Because your model was incomplete and now it's better. This is why people think you're not present. You're running scenario trees while they talk. When you finally respond, you're responding to the most likely branch, not just the surface content. Have you considered that he might be testing your commitment, you ask? They blink. How did you? I literally just told you he hired people. Why would that be a test? Because your simulation ran 5 moves ahead. Because you modeled not just this conversation, but the meta-conversation around it. Because you can't help building decision trees in real time. And the brutal truth, you suppress most of what you see. The number of times you've bitten your tongue to avoid saying, I knew this would happen, is uncountable. Because nobody wants to hear that their surprise was your probability distribution. Nobody wants their story flattened into a predictable model. So you've learned to hide the simulation, to let them tell it, to act surprised at the inevitable. But you're still running the numbers. You can't stop. The editor that never sleeps. The thought forms. This approach will definitely work. 0.3 seconds later, a second voice. Wait, definitely is too strong. What am I missing? 0.6 seconds later, revision. This approach should work if the assumptions hold. 0.9 seconds later, counter. Which assumptions? Name them. Before you've even opened your mouth, you've peer-reviewed yourself through 3 iterations. This is why you change your mind mid-sentence. Why your text messages get rewritten 4 times before sending. Why people accuse you of being indecisive when you're actually being rigorous. Your brain runs real-time quality control on its own output. You don't form an opinion and defend it. You form an opinion, immediately attack it, then refine based on which attacks land. The thought process most people externalize through argument. You internalize as continuous self-correction. Someone asks, do you think we should hire them? Your mouth opens to say yes, but your internal editor is already running. Based on what evidence? What's the counterfactual? What am I weighting too heavily? What would change my mind? By the time you speak, you've cycled through 3 positions and landed on, I'm leaning yes, but I'd want to verify their technical depth first. They hear hedging, you hear intellectual honesty, and here's the exhausting part, you can't turn it off. Even casual opinions get the full treatment. Someone asks if you liked a movie. Your brain immediately stress tests your own reaction. Did I like it or did I like the idea of it? Am I pattern matching to films I'm supposed to like? What specifically worked? This is why you're slow to form strong opinions. Not because you lack conviction, because conviction requires passing internal peer review first. The cost? People think you're wishy-washy. The benefit? When you do commit to a position, it's been battle-tested against your own best counterarguments. You thought everyone did this. Formed a thought, immediately questioned it, revised in real time. They don't. Most people form thoughts and then defend them. You form thoughts and then try to break them before anyone else can. The weight of holding contradictions. The question is simple. Do you think remote work is better? Your answer is not. It depends on whether we're optimizing for individual productivity or collaborative innovation, whether the work is creative or executional, whether the team has established trust or is newly formed, and what we mean by better. Better for whom? Measured how? Over what time horizon? The person who asked just wanted a yes or no. You cannot give yes or no, because in your mind you're holding 6 different frameworks simultaneously, each of which produces a different answer, depending on context, and they're all true. Simultaneously, this is what makes you insufferable at dinner parties, because you can't make simple declarative statements about complex topics. You're constitutionally incapable of it. Your brain automatically generates the conditions under which the opposite would be true. Inflation is bad. Your brain. For debtors or creditors, real or nominal, compared to deflation, over what period? You're not being pedantic, you're being precise. But precision in conversation reads as evasion. And here's the deeper cost. You live in a permanent state of epistemic uncertainty while watching people around you operate with false confidence. They can say, this is the right answer, and sleep well. You say, this is probably the right answer under these conditions assuming these variables, and lie awake thinking about edge cases. This makes you better at updating your beliefs, because you hold them loosely. You're not attached to being right. You're attached to having the most accurate model given current information. Someone presents new evidence that contradicts your position. You feel a small thrill, not defensiveness. Your model just got better. You can change your mind in real time because you never fully committed to being certain in the first place. But the social cost is severe. People mistake your nuance for weakness, your probabilistic thinking for lack of conviction, your willingness to update for flip-flopping. They don't see that you're holding multiple competing models in superposition, waiting for more data to collapse the wave function. They just see someone who won't give a straight answer. You've learned to translate, to give the simplified version they want, while privately maintaining the complex version you know is more accurate. Yes, remote work is generally better, you say, while your brain adds 17 asterisks they'll never hear. The futures you're already living. It's a small decision. A client wants to hire you for a project, 3 months of work, good money, but you're not thinking about 3 months. Your brain has already spun out the decision tree 10 years forward. Take the project. Less time for current clients. Relationship strain. Reputation shift toward this type of work. Pigeonholed in 5 years. Career trajectory altered. Different retirement timeline. Don't take it. Short-term revenue gap. Tighter budget. Delayed equipment upgrade. Competitive disadvantage. Playing catch-up in 18 months. You're not being paranoid. You're running temporal simulations. Every small choice triggers cascade modeling across time horizons most people don't consider. This is why you seem overcautious. Why you hesitate on simple decisions. Why you ask questions that sound like you're overthinking. Because you are thinking over time, over consequences, over second-order and third-order effects that won't manifest for years. Your friend makes an impulsive career change and you feel a specific kind of dread. Not because you're pessimistic, but because you've already simulated the branch points and you can see the trap at month 7. You don't say anything. What would you say? I've run your future in my head and it doesn't end well? So you stay quiet and hope you're wrong. But here's what this habit really is. It's responsibility. You're not overthinking. You're thinking at the scale the decision actually operates on. Most people optimize for the immediate. You can't stop seeing the long tail. This is the final pattern, the one that connects all the others. You Steelman arguments because you're simulating their strongest form. You ask questions underneath questions because you're tracing causal chains forward. You spot patterns because you've seen how they play out over time. You run predictive models because you're forecasting futures. You edit your thoughts because you're testing them against time. You hold contradictions because different time horizons produce different optimal answers. You're not smarter than other people. You're just operating on longer timescales. And you didn't learn this, it learned you. These habits installed themselves while you were busy thinking you were normal. You're not, and now you know why.